Joining us on Thursday in downtown Charlottesville. It's a pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille Network. This program, as you may know, 15 Facebook pages, 15 Twitter accounts, YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, LinkedIn, Instagram, the Fountain app, the Rumble app. I'm forgetting some. It's on every platform. And what we try to do with the show is we try to highlight content that is local to you, the viewer and listener. This past week, I think we've done a fairly decent job of highlighting new development that's happening in the Charlottesville and Albemarle County markets. And the development that's being constructed is multifamily, build for rent development. This is not build to purchase, this is build to rent. I did a post at about 12 o'clock today, so about 35 minutes ago, doing it's called the Tale of the Tape of 4 development projects. The Old Ivy Residence Project, which is 525 units on the 250 bypass and Old Ivy Road. That's the biggest one. The second biggest one is Subtext and a project called Verve. The Verve is next to Scott Stadium. That's 463 units. More than 1,300 beds there. The third biggest one is Bloom, an out-of-market developer called Up Campus Student Living, next to Bo's Barbecue, is doing 231 units and 641 beds. And I was reminded after yesterday's show by a UVA Darden graduate that is now working in high-level finance in Manhattan, lives in Chelsea, that I should include the Darden project that's on grounds. And he said, I've watched your show. He's watching in Manhattan. I follow the network. He loves the content, he said. And he said, look at what's going on with the Darden School. UVA's the developer. Gave me a little information. I did some research today. And he's right. I should include the University of Virginia in what they're doing here. They are doing on-grounds housing for Darden students. 218 units and 348 beds. They're currently fundraising for naming rights at the Darden School. So if you include the Darden project in the mix, ladies and gentlemen, amongst the 4 build-for-rent new development projects, all of them being constructed exactly right now, within 3 miles of each other, in Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville, you're going to have, within a 9-month period of time, 1,437 new luxury units coming to market. I'm going to say that again very succinctly. There's 4 build-for-rent real estate development projects that are under construction right now. 3 of those 4 are either international, which is Greystar, or national developers. The national ones, Subtext and Up Campus Student Living. One of them is local, the University of Virginia, its project at the Darden School. Those 4 are bringing projects to market within a 9-month period of time of each other. Somewhere summer 2026 to 2027, that 9-month period of time. And those 4 projects have a combined 1,437 luxury units that will be available for rent for students and for locals alike. I want to talk about that impact on today's show, on the I Love CVille show. We're also going to highlight on the program that the budget is now approved. It's been rubber stamped by the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. What's intriguing about this budget, for the first time in a really long time, since before COVID, that supervisors have decided to raise the real estate tax rate. They're popping or increasing or upticking at 4 cents. The intriguing thing about this, you look at the dynamic of the board, and Jim Andrews is stepping off the board. Diantha McKeel is stepping off the board. So as Jim Andrews, a 1-term supervisor, leaves the dais, and as Diantha McKeel, a 4-term supervisor, leaves the dais, their parting gift to Albemarle Countyans is a 4-cent real estate tax rate increase, ladies and gentlemen. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Rarely do you see governments ever cut that tax rate. You may see jurisdictions choose not to move the tax rate, keep it in place like Albemarle has done since the pandemic and up until last night, keep the tax rate the same, but you rarely, if ever, seen it drop. So the parting gift from Diantha McKeel and Jim Andrews is this 4-cent real estate tax rate increase. We'll talk about that on today's show. I want to salute Ryan Odom. He threw out the first pitch yesterday at the Dish at Davenport with Virginia baseball, doing whatever it humanly can to make a late push for some postseason magic. Ryan Odom has done a good job of late trying to indoctrinate or assimilate himself into Charlottesville and Albemarle County's communities. You see him having lunch and burgers at Riverside, taking pictures with locals, throwing out the first pitch, and really it comes down to what's the product he's going to put on the field and put on the court, And so far, the talent on this Virginia basketball roster is a United Nations who's who of talent. He's got international players galore. I promise I'm going to get to the highlights of the Carr first quarter report. Touched on it briefly yesterday, but I think there's very good information in there that needs to get out to you. We promise we'll try to get to that today. I wanted you to give some props. If you can tighten my frame a little bit here, tighten the one shot a little bit more for me, that'd be great. I want to also give some love to Charlottesville Sanitary Supply. 60 consecutive years of business for Charlottesville Sanitary Supply. 60 plus, actually. I mean, we're approaching 61. John Vermillion, Andrew Vermillion, online at charlottesvillesanitarysupply.com. Located on East High Street, Charlottesville Sanitary Supply, where City Council is eminent domaining property. East High Street. The Vermillion are great men, and the company is a genuine, bona fide, honest, hardworking, do what's best for customers company. Charlottesville Sanitary Supply. I have a question from a very important viewer and listener. Stephanie Wells Rhodes is watching the program in the Keswick, Troy area, and she says, Jerry, do you have any news, or do any of the viewers have any news on the CVEC Firefly outage? So any viewer and listener, if you can answer the question from Stephanie that's on YouTube, do you have any news on the outages for CVEC and Firefly? If you have news, put them in the feed, and I will relay them live on air to Stephanie. Conan Owen makes a very good point, and I agree with him. His photo on screen, Conan Owens, Judah. He said that 4-cent tax rate increase is nothing compared to the increased assessments. It was nice of the county lay out where the money from the increase is going, but it's pathetic that it never occurred to them to find some spending cuts to pay for it. Conan Owen, you and I are in agreement on a number of things. I sincerely mean that. I also agree with you. How Albemarle County positioned the 4-cent real estate tax rate increase. They were very quick to say this 4-cent real estate tax rate increase is for more firefighters, more police officers, and affordable housing, because they're tugging at the heartstrings of fire and rescue and affordability. And those heartstrings carry a lot of political weight or empathy. But to Conan's point, the county's already getting a boatload of incremental revenue since our assessments went up in Albemarle County a significant amount year over year. And if you look at what assessments have done over the last 4 years, I mean, we all realize that we have significant equity in our homes. If we owned a home before COVID and still are in that home or own a home now, we're sitting on significant equity. The average American, since the beginning of COVID till now, has seen about 45% appreciation in home value. But other viewers and listeners have made this point. That's not actual tangible wealth. It's not tangible wealth until you sell your house, and really all you're doing is being taxed on gains that you cannot hold or touch or spend. So that's the point. Kevin Yancey, Bill McChesney, welcome to the program. Viewers and listeners, thank you for watching, of all shapes and sizes. Curtis Shaver has an answer for Stephanie Wells Rhodes. Curtis Shaver is watching in Greene County. He says, apparently Firefly is out from Greene County to Nelson County. Curtis Shaver, one of the newest stakeholders and influencers in God's country in Greene County. Philip Dow watching the program. He says, I'm having Firefly issues, Stephanie, in Scottsville. So here you have Scottsville and Philip Dow answering Stephanie Wells Rhodes' question in Keswick and Troy. And Greene County's Curtis Shaver offering perspective as well. That's what makes this program great. That's exactly what we're looking for here. If you're having Firefly CVEC issues and you can share some perspective, put them in the feed. I will relay them live on air as Stephanie is looking for some guidance here, and we're doing our best to help each other out. Judah Wickhauer, 2-shot, studio camera and 2-shot. I want to weave you into the mix. And I don't want to underestimate or devalue or I kind of talked over it. I have a bad habit of talking over, especially on this show, because I get really caught up on the topic matter that we're talking about. You made the really good point yesterday about all these units coming to market at the same time, that let's see how the cookie crumbles, because if the cookie crumbles a certain way, it could in fact stabilize rents or decrease rents, and it could in fact stabilize home prices. I was quick to assume that's what you were going to say. My assumption was right. Then I was answering what I thought you were going to say, which is what you were going to say, by saying the population's going to increase. So these uptick in units, and within a 9-month period of time, from about summer 2026 to spring 2027, we're going to have, Judah, 1,437 luxury units come to market across 4 different projects. And that doesn't even include, by 2027, the University of Virginia doing its best to build housing for second years to live on grounds. So that's going to be more people taking out of the rental ecosystem. I'm just so convinced that with the influx of people coming here, that this housing stock will be earmarked or will be rented. I reached out to our people over in Stonefield at the Elysian, and they said those units are starting to get rented.
That's good.
Those units are starting to get full. They missed a rental cycle, and because they missed a rental cycle, that set them back, but they're starting to get full. I've been told that the Verve and Subtex, the apartment tower next to Scott Stadium, also missed a rental cycle. But they seemed very confident when one of their directors of development came on the show that they were going to fill these spaces. Mm-hmm. So first off, I never want to. I was watching or thinking about yesterday's show, and I shouldn't have jumped in that way. Secondly, I'm curious of what your take, now that we have even more intelligence with the Darden School building housing for second years. Now, it's important to emphasize, when the Darden School is building housing for 218 units and 348 beds for Darden students, it's also upticking its enrollment. It's important for me to emphasize this. Darden may be taking a portion of the MBA rental population and putting it on grounds with this 218 unit, 348 bed development that's going to open in the summer of 2027. But Darden has also clearly said on record, we're going to admit more students to the Darden School. So when they admit more students, it's not just like
UVA has been saying that as well.
UVA is going to do it as well. Right. UVA is going to do it as well. And we highlight Paul Manning's biotech and Jeffrey Woodruff's data science.
Yeah.
And it's not just students, but it's staff, it's directors, and it's the businesses that kind of siphon or pop up on the supply chain of all the schools. and all the new bodies here.
Yeah.
So curious some of your takes here. I concluded my analysis on the I Love CVille Network by saying this, and I published this about 30 minutes before the show. You can find it on any of our Facebook pages. I believe you have it up on Instagram, on I Love CVille Instagram, on my LinkedIn, on Twitter, my Facebook, I Love CVille Facebook, I Love CVille Food Facebook.
It's on both Instagrams.
It's on both Instagrams. Okay, I concluded by saying this. If these 4 multifamily projects, Judah, do not stabilize rental prices and housing prices, then that is further justification that the City of Charlottesville new zoning ordinance may be one of the most significant policy failures in city housing history.
Explain how.
I mean, you get 1,437 units flooding the market within 9 months of each other, and prices, home values still go up, and rents still go up. Then it's clear to the market that it's not the zoning that's the problem, that it's not the tightness or the restrictiveness of the zoning that's creating this quality of life that's so expensive for all of us.
Yeah.
I published on the I Love CVille Network yesterday the business model of Graystar's Old Ivy residence, and I said the average, I think, is about $3,500 a month in rent across all product type, across all 525 units on the bypass in Old Ivy Road, and people were shocked by the $3,500 average rent. And then I'm like, guys, are you really that shocked by this? I got a rental at the Villas at Southern Ridge that's just basically $2,600 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a condo complex that was converted from being essentially the ghetto of Charlottesville into a condo that doesn't really have that many amenities and isn't nearly in as good of a location as where the Old Ivy residence is going to be. And it's $2,600. And by the time Old Ivy residences are up, I'm going to raise that $2,600 another 5%. Mm-hmm. That's another $130 to take it to $27,300. I think the $3,500 might be light. And then you add in the mix, add in the factor that, did you see the news with Cav Crossing? Cavalier Crossing, was it Sean that reported this? I think Sean Tubbs reported this recently. The owner of Cavalier Crossing, let me see if I can find it, St. Bonaventure, they are looking to take infill, basically a parking lot at the Cav Crossing location, right there off Old Lynchburg Road, and build more apartment towers on it. They basically scooped up one of the last affordable pieces of housing in Charlottesville. I mean, really the last one now is what, Eagles Landing? That's multifamily. I mean, somebody help me out here. What is the last truly affordable multifamily housing piece of housing in the Charlottesville-Albemarle County area? It's probably Eagles Landing, right? Now that Cavalier Crossing is being renovated, remodeled, and repositioned as high-end or top of the market. Yeah. I'm almost positive it was Sean that reported that the owners of Cav Crossing, the Northern Virginia folks, are going to take some of that infill, some of that parking lot, and they're going to look to build more apartments on there. Mm-hmm. So Bill McChesney made this point here. Like, are all these people, all these developers, they're coming to market with, if you include the Cav Crossing project, with north of 1,500, maybe 1,600 units at the exact same time.
Yeah,
it's bananas to me. Your thoughts? Let's jump in there.
How closely tied are is the apartment market and the housing market?
That's a great question. It's a great question. You want to unpack that?
Well, if some people are just looking for houses, if some people want to buy a house and they're not going to settle for an apartment, then it doesn't matter how many apartments you build, those people are always going to want a house. And if there's nobody building houses, then the housing portion of the market is going to stay tight.
Let me ask you this question. And this is one of those things, where I don't mean to insult you, but I don't mean to offend you, but, one of those things here. Yeah, it is. It's from the CVille Weekly. the owners of Cavalier Crossing apartment complex on 5th Street Extended, Bonaventure, it's a real estate investment trust. They are seeking rezoning to add 165 more units to the former Cav Crossing site off 5th Street Extended, off Old Lynchburg Road. 164 units. It's now known as Attain on 5th. They've rebranded it. Attain on 5th, yeah. I want to, and
it sounds like you're saying something else.
What does it sound like?
Attained on 5th?
Attained on 5th. Gosh, you sicko. Attain on 5th. Attain on 5th. Let me ask you this question, okay? In the least offensive way possible. You're a homeowner.
Yeah.
Folks that are renting, do they want to rent in perpetuity? Does someone want to rent an apartment in perpetuity? You asked me this question, basically. If there's building these apartments, all these apartments that are out there, now another 165 to the number that I said amongst the first 4, which was 147, that takes us to basically 1,600 units, right? It's over 1,600 units. Mm-hmm. Those folks that are renting those 1,600 units, wouldn't you say the overwhelming majority of the people that will rent those 1,600 units, incremental new units, are looking to transition into an ownership model?
An overwhelming number of them?
You disagree? I don't have the answer. I don't know if there is even a right answer, but you disagree?
I would say that, and I don't know. I don't have the answer either.
No
but
one has
I
the
would
answer.
guess that that there's a wide spectrum. There are some people who would love to own a home, but don't see it in the cards or whatever. There are some people that don't want to own a home. They're like, I don't want the hassle. I don't want to deal with having to replace a roof. I don't want to deal with having to replace an HVAC unit. I don't want to deal with, whatever it is, whether it's mold, whether it's, leaky pipes. Leave that to someone else. I'll just pay the flat fee, the rent, and be done with it, and I'll be happy. And there are some people that I think it doesn't even cross their minds. Some people are just like, well, this is the way it is. There are people out there that own homes, but I'm not one of them. And I'm sure there are some people that just, it's never occurred to them that they could be a homeowner. Whether it's because they're always living on their last paycheck or whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like an attainable goal. So I think there are probably other people in that spectrum as well that I don't know about. And so I would guess if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably less than 50% that look at the apartments out there, look at the apartment they're in, and say, okay, my goal is getting out of this and getting into a house. I think for some people it just doesn't register.
There's no Curtis Shaver says to Stephanie Wells Rhodes that Firefly just went back on in Greene County. Stephanie Wells Rhodes.
Nice.
So Curtis Shaver is saying it just went back on. Faye Cox Gutierrez watching the program. And she says most, not all of that group, but most want their own home. They need to make it affordable again. I would say if there's 1,600 new units coming to market, somewhere between 2026 and 2027, we've identified that there are 1,600 new incremental units coming to market if Bonaventure can get this rezoning for the infill of the old Cavalier Crossing, can build more apartments. Regardless, we know that there are, across the 4 that I highlighted, 1,437 new units. Mm-hmm. I would say of those 1,437 that we know of, and potentially more than 1,600, depending on Cav Crossing, that 75%, it's the American dream. I mean, home ownership is as part of Americana as the McDonald's Golden Arches or apple pie or having a cold beer after cutting the grass. Mm-hmm. I can't think of, if you had to break down what the American dream was, how would you assess what the American dream, how would you describe the American dream to somebody if you're sitting at a bar and having a beer with? I'm asking you, Judah, I am new to America. I'm considering coming to America. I hear constantly about the American dream. What is the American dream, Judah? What is the American dream to you? How would you answer that?
I would say at one time it was a two-story house behind a picket fence with a yard and...
There it is. The first thing you said, the first thing you went to was the house.
Yeah.
The first thing you went to was the house.
I don't know if people still see it that way.
Interesting. So that's a great
Look, I don't know if you've seen the meme, but there's a meme that shows like, a couple, and it's like, my parents in 1960 or 1970 or 1980 or whatever, and it shows, and then on the other side it shows a house, and it says the house they bought for
I've seen that
$60,000.
That's a great meme.
And then underneath it there's a picture, and it's like me and everybody else today, or whoever they're indicating that you're looking at, and it shows, I don't know I can't remember what it shows on the other side, but it basically says that there's no way that they can afford a house now. It's not the same as it was back then. You can't, I think on the upper one it also explains that the mom is a stay-at-home mom, the dad is working a regular job,
9 to 5.
He's not like the CEO of a bank,
right,
or the owner of a company. He's just working a 9 to 5 job, and they can afford to buy a house. And that dream, I think, for a lot of people is, if not gone, at least sullied. It's I don't know. It's more of a pipe dream.
Pipe dream? Okay.
Than an actual
so the American
dream.
dream is the American pipe dream now?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people.
Okay.
I mean, just look at social media. Look at the younger generations and how they, whether it's quiet quitting or living in their parents' basement or just, wanting, we've talked about people wanting to be influencers because they look around them and they're like, nothing else is going to give me, nothing else is going to help me afford a home, is going to help me afford to, keep a nice car. They see it all slipping away.
I like it. This is a good topic here. Is the American dream on May 8th, 2025, home ownership? Or is it the American pipe dream?
I think a lot of people see it as an American pipe dream. I mean, we've discussed the...
Then what is the American dream today?
Survival.
Wow. Has it become that? Viewers and listeners,
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Are we? No.
There are a lot of people that are getting by, that are doing well, but maybe this is bias based on what we see on social media. Everybody's glued to these things, and you see what other people are doing. You see what you imagine a successful person.
Yeah,
looks
someone's
like.
Instagram grid.
And so, but I think there's a grain of truth in all of the memes, and it's true. You can't have a one-income house. You can't have a one-income family and be buying a house in Charlottesville today. It just doesn't work that way.
Viewers and listeners, your thoughts. Your one-income family own a house.
I had help, and
you didn't have help.
I did have help.
You structured a really good deal.
And I got help from my parents. I couldn't have done it myself. I spent my entire savings paying off things that I had to pay off in order to get to the point that I could buy the house.
Is the American dream in 2025 for Charlottesville survival? Is the American dream for 2025 in Albemarle County survival? Is the American dream for 2025 in Charlottesville and Albemarle County home ownership? Are these 1,400 to 1,600 units that are coming on market in 2026, 2027, are all they going to do be housing quicksand for the tenants? By housing quicksand, we all know the situation. You're in a lease. You want to get out of the lease. You can't get out of the lease. You're trapped with the lease. You can't afford the lease. Can't break the lease. And every year the rent goes up.
And you can't get into another lease because if you're barely making the rent payment on one place, how are you going to save up for the first month, last month,
and security deposit?
That's 3 months of rent
plus the moving.
When you can barely pay for
plus
one
the moving
one
and the
month.
time and cost involved.
Exactly.
And do the developers of these 4 projects, let's be specific, 3 of them, one of them's UVA, 3 of them are out-of-market developers. Are they aware of these dynamics? And do they price the product at the point where it's enough, barely enough that you can afford, but not enough for you to do anything else with?
Or is that just a feature of the market?
Or is that a byproduct of the cost of development? This comes in from somebody who's in development that listened to yesterday's show. So the beautiful thing about the program is we're learning from viewers and listeners. So this is from somebody who is asked to keep their name out of it. They work in development. This particular person works in development. Mm-hmm. He says, I was listening to, and this is not Deep Throat. In fact, he references Deep Throat in the comment. He says, I was listening to yesterday's show and penciling things out, and my guess for all-in cost at Old Ivy with the Gray Star project was $225 million, assuming average unit is 1,800 square feet since mix of apartments and dense houses. Then he says, I heard Deep Throat do an estimate of between $200 million and $250 million, so that made me feel good about my napkin math. He says, here's my breakdown. $225 million for the Gray Star Old Ivy Residence project. That's 525 units. Means they probably are bringing $75 million cash to the table, and then we'll get institutional financing of $150 million, maybe from a life insurance company. Let's walk down the cash on cash. $3,500 rent a unit per month. $22 million top line revenue, less the $2 million real estate tax. You have a 5% vacancy minus the 10% net operating expense. The ownership will eat that. Pass-through charges won't cover. Then let's say $150 million loan, interest only for 3 years at 6%. That's $9 million cash per year. That leaves about $8.2 million net cash on cash annually against the $75 million outlay, which is about a 10% IRR cash. There could be major mistakes in the above math, but back of the envelope, I would bet this is the business model and required average rent combining apartments and houses. Hope this offers some insight. You have to keep my name out of this. This is from someone literally that does this professionally for a living, a heavy hitter, offering this perspective. A model of what is happening on Old Ivy Road. I'm going to ask you, and if you want some fodder for your cocktail parties for this weekend, is the American dream in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, is it survive in a costly rental, or is it still home ownership? That's a question that will have easily an hour of fill at your cocktail and charcuterie party.
I mean, I've seen...
I'm also going to add this. I've said this many times, that Charlottesville and Albemarle County is no longer a 40-hour work week. You're clocking 40 hours a week. I would say somewhere between 60 and 80 hours a week, depending on the week.
Okay, but that's not...
The viewer and listener...
You making that statement doesn't...
If the viewer and listener wanted to work more than 40 hours a week, that would give them an opportunity to accumulate more earnings and wealth.
Yeah.
And if they worked more than 40 hours a week and they were surviving on 40 and they worked an additional 20, then you very easily could bank the additional 20 and use that additional 20 to buy some real estate. And then do what I did, where you lived in a condo that you didn't want to buy, that was literally a converted ghetto on Country Green. And you live there for 7 years and you get some roommates for 7 years. And then next thing you know, you got something that's paid off. And then you start playing Monopoly and building a holding portfolio. You can do that. It takes ridiculous sacrifice.
Yeah.
It means no vacations, no new cars, working 60, 70 hours a week, having roommates, and being very tight with what you're eating and your spending habits. And if you're willing to do that for 7 or 10 years, you could easily buy a home and a rental property. You're now in a position where we could figure something out and you could buy a rental property. You've got what? 6 years, 7 years, 8 years of equity in there? And on top of that, the home's appreciated significantly, and you're living there completely by yourself? You easily could do what I just did. I just happened to do it in my 20s when everybody else I knew in my 20s out of UVA was buying BMWs and Mercedes-Benz and taking trips to the Maldives or to Hawaii or to Europe. Mm-hmm. And they were working 40 hours a week, and they were going out and closing the bars 4 nights a week, and they were spending all their money. That's the difference. That's why a lot of times where I say in this program, I don't feel guilty for being successful, because I understand the sacrifice that was made for 15 years, 10 years of my life, where some would say it's your prime years. Mm-hmm. You know, single right out of college and you have your first real job that pays some money. Okay? Was that the platform for what we have now? Absolutely. But it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point. And you also should offer this, and you've said this before, you also took the risk of starting a business where you're able to pay yourself more money because you're the owner. That's another risk that we did. Comments are coming in. Conan Owen says this: I think there's definitely a generational attitude favoring experiences over things, and the idea of being tied to an asset for 30 years isn't something that fits their perceived lifestyle of themselves. Also, buying a home isn't really economical if your horizon is less than 5 years because of all the fixed costs of the transaction. Is Charlottesville that stable of a destination for medical personnel and people in the growing tech fields that they would stay here long enough? I do think it is. I do think that if you talk to the medical professionals that are tied to UVA Health, that this is the end of the road for them professionally. I am not willing to say for the tech personnel that we're at that point yet. I'm not willing to say that tech-wise we're a San Francisco or an Austin. We don't have enough experience or empirical evidence or data to make that comment. But from a medical standpoint, I do think we're at that point. I absolutely do. Travis Hackworth is watching the program in Danville, Virginia. I would say that home ownership is still the long-term American dream, but the short-term is literally survival. You cannot be a one-income household anymore and afford the housing prices in today's market, not without substituting in some way a potential second income. Debt and high interest rates are crushing potential home ownership. 100%, Travis. But you just highlighted how you can do it if you want to be a one-income earner. You have to have a second income or work more than 40 hours a week if you're the one income earner. So that's the problem, is not everybody is willing to...
No, that is not the problem.
This is where Jude and I completely disagree on this.
Because you can't just say the bar has moved.
Bar has moved.
Okay, well then
the bar
this
has
is the
moved.
problem, Jerry. You can't say that, because when does you're going to pull the rug out from someone again? Then you're going to say, "Oh, well."
You're basically saying the bar's going to move a third time? Is that what you're saying?
That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it's 70 hours a week. Oh, I'm sorry. You thought you were close to getting a home? That was 5 years ago. Now it's 80 hours a week. When does it become too much? When is it all your time? When it becomes too much? When does somebody just own you, like we were talking about yesterday with the rentals? When does it become too much? When is it unsustainable? It becomes
too much. It becomes too much when you're content with your quality of life and what you have. If somebody wants a home and they don't own a home, they want to own a home, and they're stuck in a rental that they think is too expensive, but they want to buy a house, their option is to work more to make more money.
Until you raise the bar again.
But if they don't want to work more to make more money, then they're going to rent their home. They're going to rent. There's no other option.
Right? That's the problem.
This is what it is. It's not a problem. It is. This is what it is. I don't understand the mindset.
Because you're saying that it's no longer this, it's this. And now it's no longer this, it's this. And now it's no longer, but you can't just keep doing that. Because eventually somebody can't work.
But you realize, Judah, but that's what's going to happen though, right?
Okay, and that's when we're going to, I mean, I don't want this to be true, but eventually there's going to be blood in the streets. Because
Blood on the streets?
because
what is
when
this, Call of Duty?
Jerry, when you tell someone that they have to work every waking hour of the day in order to afford life, something is going to break. You can't just keep moving the bar up.
I don't know how to respond to that statement outside of saying that's the Charlottesville, that's the Albemarle County, that's the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the America we live in. We have 6 Albemarle County officials on the dais that are making $17,000 and $18,000 a year to be the Board of Supervisors, who last night just said we are going to raise the personal property tax rate, and we're going to raise the real estate tax rate. And they said we're going to raise the real estate tax rate and the personal property tax rate, despite the fact that the government sector, the federal government, all these government contractors are facing headwinds. Groceries are expensive. Credit card debt's out of control. Gasoline still is not cheap. The UVA's got headwinds, pay cuts, freezes left and right. Assessments were through the roof. Headwinds everywhere. And they basically said, all your possessions, even if you're renting, we're going to tax you more. Because if you're renting and the tax rate goes up, the landlord's going to pass it on to you. It's called the 5% yearly escalator.
Of course.
It's not the landlord that's going to pay it. It's the tenant that's going to pay it. 6 Democrats said that to all of Albemarle County. We understand everyone's struggling financially, but we're going to ask more money of you.
Yeah.
Okay? This is what we've signed up for.
What do you mean what we've signed up for?
They were voted into office by Albemarle County in overwhelming capacity. Right now, there's not a single person running against Ned Galloway, who's seeking his 3rd term. Diantha McNeil is finishing her 4th term. Ann Malik is in her 5th term. B. Lepisto Kirtley is in her 2nd term.
Yep.
This is what Albemarle County wants.
That's fair.
Okay? So there's not going to be blood on the street.
I'm not talking about right now.
There's not going to be resistance. This is what the voters wanted. If the voters really were like, we're about to have blood on the streets and we're about to get in a royal rumble.
I never said it was about to occur in the next week.
If the voters were serious about really revolting, they would not be voting these folks onto the dais. They would be voting what Nelson County is cutting taxes. Nelson County is cutting tax rates. Cutting them.
It's awesome.
This is what Albemarle County wants, the world we're in right now.
Okay.
Albemarle County approved all these developments. They approved the Gray Star project. City of Charlottesville approved the Subtext Verve project and the Bloom Up Campus Development project. All those projects, all they're going to do is raise rents. We have this conversation like once a quarter. Philip Dow says, in some ways, what you're talking about sounds like communism, Judah.
What do you mean?
That people are going to revolt when it comes to working too much.
If you tell them that they have to work every waking hour of the day, then there's not really much else they can do. I'm not saying we're there now. I'm not saying I want us to be there now. I'm just saying if you keep saying, "Oh, it's not a 40-hour work week anymore; it's a 60-hour work week."
It is a 60-hour
and
work
then
week.
when you say
It
that's
is a
not
60-hour work
and then
week.
when you say that's no longer enough, it's a 70-hour work week. Eventually, people are going to say no.
No, that's not eventually what people are going to say. You know what? They're not going to say no. You know what they're going to do? They're going to get up and move and leave. And then they're going to be replaced by somebody else that can come into this community and work the 60 hours a week or the 40 hours a week and pay their bills.
Okay.
And that's called gentrification. And that's why the median family household income, every year we talk about it on this show, has gone up. Every year. Every year it's going up. It doesn't go down. People are just getting replaced.
Yeah.
They're getting subbed out. There's no blood on the street. I know you meant that metaphorically. I know you meant that. I'm not literally.
I'm talking about when there aren't any more 40-hour week jobs that will pay for a home in Charlottesville.
And I'll tell you this. And this is a really sad story. I'm going to get to comments here. E.G. Williams, Deep Throat. I'm going to get to your comments. I'm going to get to folks on LinkedIn. Jeremy Wilson, who's watching in Tennessee. Multiple states watching the program. Faye Cox Gutierrez is watching in Colorado. She lives in Nelson. I hate to tell people this, okay? Artificial intelligence, AI, and technology. The jobs that will be replaced first are the folks committed to working 40 hours a week. That's the jobs that will be replaced first. The 40-hour-a-week, lower-paying jobs will be the ones cannibalized by artificial intelligence first. Mark it down. The jobs of upper management and C-suite decision makers, those are the jobs that will not be replaced initially by AI and artificial intelligence.
Right. I'm with you there.
Randy O'Neill says, jail and work release may be the cheapest housing. You will not replace us was the chant from the Tiki Torch crowd.
What?
He said, you will not replace us was the chant from the Tiki Torch crowd. I don't think that applies here.
I don't really want to touch that. They weren't talking about the same
Jason
thing.
Noble pushing back on you, Judah. You mean we have to make sacrifices to get ahead? Ew.
That's not fair.
Faye Cox Gutierrez to Judah. Got to give things up to make things happen.
I don't disagree.
Deep Throat on Twitter. Even millennials, and he shares a link from Redfin, vastly prefer the idea of a single-family home. 89% of home buyers would prefer a single-family home with a backyard over a unit in a triplex with a shorter commute. It's still the American dream.
Yeah.
Travis in Danville. He says Danville City Council rejected the suggested utility rate increases last night. Charlottesville's problem is the elected officials. They've created a political system in which the same people or like people just continue to be elected. It's a popularity contest of personalities and not a contest of the best ideas. Excellent comment from Travis Hackworth. Janice Boyce Trevelyan, an American has been chosen as the new pope. Robert Prevost from Chicago.
They picked one. Wow. That
I
was
didn't
fast.
see that. Deep Throats says, to Conan Owens' point, at least in finance, this is a place where you do your sayonara job, not where you punch your first ticket. Most of the folks that I know, and most of the folks that I'm friends with or I know professionally have come to Charlottesville as the final destination, as the final countdown, the final destination. They've sacrificed to get to Charlottesville. William on McIntyre Road, McChesney. We are getting to be like California, where very wealthy or large corporations snatch up the real estate inventory and turn it into investment rental property, thereby increasing prices and making individual home ownership out of reach. This applies for people who are making six figures and up. I published a snapshot of the 4 development projects on the I Love CVille Network. We've covered old Ivy residences in the 525 units. We've covered the Verve, the developer is Subtext, in the 463 units. We covered Bloom, the developer is Up Campus Student Living. That's by Moe's Barbecue, 231 units and 641 beds. I did not highlight this week the Darden Schools project, which is coming summer of 2027, 218 units, 348 beds, specifically for Darden MBAs. They are fundraising right now for naming rights for the residences. 218 units, 348 beds, summer 2027. There's 4 major development projects with a total of 1,437 luxury units that will come on market within 9 months of each other. If you want to see the tail of the tape, look at the I Love CVille Network. That is going to have a significant impact on Charlottesville. And I'm going to tell you, if we do not get affordability from 1,400 and some units coming on market within 9 months of each other, then it's clearly an indication that relaxing the zoning was not the solution to breeding affordability. Clearly. E.G. Williams is watching the program. If renting a nice apartment is $3,500 per month, can you imagine what the asking price of a nice house in the same area is going to shoot up to? Exactly my point. He also says, with folks wanting jobs where they can work from home, I don't see the average person wanting to work 60 hours a week on or off site of your job. The option is to move to a community that is more affordable. I've talked about Danville, the advantages of Danville, Dan Vegas. And I'm bringing up Danville because Travis Hackworth is watching the program. Travis, I've followed the news. We've had some job cuts in Danville. Goodyear plans to cut approximately 850 jobs at its tire manufacturing plant in Danville. The Goodyear job cuts in Danville are going to have a massive impact on the community. He's the first to say that. What was the second employer? What was the second major employer that was laying people off in Danville, Travis? I know I read that there was a second one. People come here because that's where the jobs are. People aren't moving to Buckingham for the jobs. They're not moving to Dillwyn for the jobs. They may be willing to commute from there to Charlottesville, but somebody that's commuting from Buckingham and Dillwyn to Charlottesville because of affordability, what they don't realize is that commute is basically working that extra 20-hour-a-week job that I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It's a tough pill to swallow. It's just not a 40-hour work week anymore.
What did I hear? I heard something or read someone talking about the fact that that, what was it? It was talking about with a mortgage, when you're applying for a mortgage, having the distance you're going to travel be a part of the. I think it might have been, what's his name on Reddit? One of the local realtors.
What are you saying?
I'll look around for it.
No, I can help you with this.
It was essentially talking about the fact that how far you're planning to live from work should be a part of the calculation in your mortgage.
Jim Duncan was talking about that on Reddit.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're talking about. Essentially, the distance you have to drive is going to affect how much take-home pay you end up with.
Yeah. If someone's driving from Dillwyn to Charlottesville for work, you better factor in the fact in your budget, fuel and wear and tear on your car, and wear and tear on your most precious commodity, your time.
Right.
People not doing that.
Yeah.
Insane. All right. If I don't get to this today, I'm not going to get to it because it's already Thursday. The car Q1 report, was out, and the sales activity was flat in the car region this quarter. 695 closed sales in the area during the first quarter of 2025, which was one additional sale than this time last year. Ladies and gentlemen, home prices and the car footprint rose. The region-wide median sales price in the car footprint was $450,000 in the first quarter. That's 3% or $15K higher than this time last year. And in pockets of Charlottesville and Albemarle, it rose even more. If you want to break into the area between the Lewis Mountain neighborhood and the 240-250 split, basically Ivy, that shot rocketed upward double-digit percentage points year over year. The entry point in that corridor for a breaking into the corridor is about $1.1 million to break into that corridor, folks. And you're going to need a lot of work to put into the house. Active listing supply continues to grow. You're seeing the balance in a lot of the Charlottesville Area Association footprint become more equal amongst buyers and sellers. You're seeing buyers having a little bit more negotiating leverage where home inspections are returning, where some closing costs in some circumstances are being offered, where homes are getting long with their days on market. Will it stay the same? Who knows? Jerome Powell said yesterday, we're not cutting rates anytime soon. And Powell told the entire world, I'm not going to cave to Donald Trump's pressure to cut rates. What the administration wants has no effect on me as the chair of the Fed. He said that yesterday. He's not going to be bullied by Trump. He said that. This is from Deep Throat. The CVille urban ring is not attractive enough from an amenity or opportunity standpoint that people will work any amount to stay here. He says, I think the limit that Judah is trying to feel out is that at a certain point, people are going to leave. There are a lot of places in the U.S. that are still pretty cheap where you can get a low credential service job and live okay.
My actual point is that when what Jerry is talking about is occurring all across the United States and there is nowhere else to go to, then there's going to be a serious problem. And the fact that you can say, well, here you have to work 60 hours a week to survive, well, once that starts spreading and once that,
that is spreading.
Once you raise that bar too high, and
Judah, this is where you want to know where the bar is going to be raised, okay? And not trying to get doom and gloom for the viewers and listeners. Do you want to know where the bar is going to be raised to?
Okay.
Okay? The average effing American is going to have to work 60 hours a week just to keep up with artificial intelligence that could do his or her job in 10 minutes. That's where the bar is going to go. Do you hear that, viewers and listeners? But artificial intelligence is going to do what you do in 60 hours a week in 10 minutes. There's artificial intelligence that is doing the stuff of MBAs that are products of the Ivy League, that got masters in business from Ivy League schools that are working for the most prestigious banks in the world. They're taking companies public. Documentation and a process to take a company public that is taking middle-level executive weeks to do, artificial intelligence is doing in hours. And these are Ivy League graduates with high-level degrees in finance. Mm-hmm. The average Joe and the average Sally is not going to say, oh my God, I have to work 60 hours a week to get a house. It's going to have to work 60 hours a week just to keep your effing job. Not to be replaced by a robot. And if you don't think that, do you think what I'm saying is hyperbole?
What?
What I just said there?
That AI is going to, it's already on. Look, we've seen it all over the place. There was every leap in technology is supposed to make life easier for us, but in essence, it ends up cutting into the workforce.
There it is.
A machine can do it better. Okay, well, somebody still needs to watch the machine, but you can replace the 10 people with the one machine and the 2 people that can keep the machine oiled and the program running correctly.
Jason Noble, sounds like a Nike commercial for learning a trade. Faye Cox Gutierrez in Colorado agrees with us. Travis Hackworth said the Goodyear plant was bad news for Danville, and he highlights the other major layoff. The other company that had major layoffs in Danville was Morgan Olson. They're in the plywood business, Morgan Olson. He says there's some good news for Danville, though. Site Selection magazine has announced that Microporous, a lithium-ion battery separator manufacturer, has been recognized as a 2024 top deal in North America. In November of 2024, Microporous announced plans to invest $1.35 billion to establish a new facility in Pittsylvania County and create 2,000-plus jobs.
Nice.
Jeremy Wilson in Tennessee says maybe it's time to hear the trumpets play. Go 6 feet under. To go 6 feet under, I think, is what he's alluding to. All right, it's 1:37, and speaking of work, we got to go make some money. You want to see a microcosm of what it could be? A microcosm of what it's going to be? Go into the McDonald's at the base of Pantops. That McDonald's that was normally run by 10 or 12 people is being run by 3. There are people in the back cooking the food. All orders are done on a kiosk. They're pushing you to not even use the drive-through anymore. They're pushing you to order the food on your phone and park into a parking space in front of the building and have the food delivered to your window and not wait in the drive-thru. They are replacing people. 60 hours a week is not to own a home. 60 hours a week is to save your job. Thursday edition of the I Love CVille Show. So long, everybody.